When the weekend's said and done, a car that had been purchased maybe 6 weeks prior to the event via credit card is now no longer in existence. We've been running our shop, renting cars pretty regularly since 2016. So about 8 years with that. We had the shop for a few years before that where we were just kind of, it was a side job. I was pretty involved at Skip Barber. My dad was very involved in the Lamborghini dealership in Atlanta. 2016, I sort of went all in as I transitioned out of Skip Barber to running the shop. My father joined me about a year later. And then from there, it's grown a little bit every year. We started with Miatas, then we moved to some third generation Mazda MX-5s, a car with anti-lock brakes. Great teaching car for folks that are new to motorsports. It does everything pretty well. Adequate amount of power, but it rewards a good driver and it quickly highlights the mistakes that a novice driver may make without the exponentially expensive consequences for making the mistake. We've also added some Porsches to our fleet. We had one particular driver, Steve Denton. He and his brother Paul came and raced with us one weekend in an MX-5. They enjoyed it. The team put together a heck of a performance. They finished on the podium both days. And he said, well, what would you do if you could do something next year and maybe move up? And I said, I'd build a Porsche Cayman right away. And he said, well, my brother and I have a Porsche Cayman at another shop that we're looking to move on from. So if you want to go get it next week and modify it to run in this series, then we can do so. And quickly with that, we moved up. We ran the Porsche. We rented seats to folks. We ran the car 6 times that year, finished on the podium 5 of 6 races that we did. And then all of a sudden, Carden Motorsports turned into Denton Carden Racing. And it's now evolved where not only do we have that first generation Cayman to rent, we also have a GT4 Club Sport to rent and have really opened up the opportunities that we're able to provide people. With that comes a lot of different stories. With that comes the good, the bad, the ugly. It's an ever-changing day every time you rent a race car, but ultimately it is a service that I pride myself in as a team because ultimately we make a pretty good effort to prepare a solid race car and have customers come enjoy themselves and produce quality results with a strong sense of self-fulfillment. It doesn't always go well. It's like where you start with that, right? You start with, hey, things have been slow, or we're still building the business. Not so much now. We have a pretty well-established client base that comes and drives our cars. But you rewind to 5 or 6 years ago. All right, you're making a Facebook post. You've got a race coming up, and 5 minutes later, you're sifting through the 20 messages that you have on Facebook. You have the guy who's quick to tell you everything that he's won, everything that he's accomplished. A guy you've probably never heard of before, but he's quick to tell you why he deserves a discount, why he can coach everybody else on the team, and him in your car is going to help you sell more seats. Well, our business model was based largely upon endurance racing, where we're doing a 9-hour race Saturday and Sunday. We're doing a 14-hour race on one particular day where we're needing 3 or 4 drivers per car to go racing. So you get the guy who wants to coach the other drivers. He wants the discount. The next thing is you get the guy who has no experience, wants to be talked through how he goes racing, probably needs more help than you can give him at the current point and is ultimately not a good fit for the ride. And then you have the guy you exchange 3 or 4 messages with that then leads to an hour phone call, and maybe you have your guy. So now you find your drivers, you go racing, you have a pair of 3 or 4 drivers. Usually 4 drivers is what worked best for our business model. We're going to a race. We have 4 guys that are driving. 2 have been to the track before, 2 have not. So we have our Friday practice day. The idea is to get the people in the car who know the track, make sure they're comfortable, everything's good, and then turn it over to the guys who've never been there before. Now, with 4 people in a car, you're gonna get all walks of life. You're gonna get several different personalities. You might have a young, upcoming driver that's on the path to become a pro. He's there simply to prove himself. Or he could be someone like myself who is a student of the craft, absorbing as much information you can. He's there to learn, and he's gonna be a great addition to the team. Next, you have a successful businessman. Racing is his hobby, and he wants to have a solid performance, but he wants everything to go well. He runs his business at a certain standard and expects the business endeavor that you're going on with him to go racing to be run the same way. So everybody's looking for all the details. The perception of what you're doing is strong when you're making a first impression on people. The cars need to be clean. The cars need to show up and become reliable. And the first impression leads to people's initial attitude of how they approach the weekend. Now we get into the weekend. We have people that are going racing. We get through practice, and now it's time to go racing. So you have to figure out the driver order. Who does the best driver changes from which driver to another based on height, changing the seat pads. and everything there. You sort of establish the driver order. And then you go racing, and do you have a guy that's in the car that lacks what we like to call in the racing world mechanical sympathy? Do you have a guy that's gung-ho to be the king of the late breakers? Is he going to be excessively wearing the brake pads because he doesn't realize that it's a 9-hour race? He's in the car for his hour, and his hour is his time to go qualify and do every lap as fast as he absolutely can. Is he looking at the end goal for the team? Because now you've pushed the car, king of the late breakers. He's thinking that going fast is what he's doing, and I like to add in my coaching to everybody that going fast is the end result of executing the process as efficiently as you can. Going fast in an endurance race is a little bit different than going fast for 2 or 3 laps to try to qualify for the race. We want the car that has the consistency and longevity stint after stint so that we can see the checkered flag. Now, this guy might be very aggressive on the brakes. You turn it over to the next guy who's not very good with shifting. The footwork's a bit sloppy. The transmission could be the weak link in the car, and now you have a guy who's hard on the transmission. This is where you have to start to identify the weaknesses in all of your drivers, figure out what you need to do to stay ahead of certain stuff. Do you have a guy who uses excessive amounts of curb? Is he bounding the car over the curb too aggressively for a long race? Is he dropping wheels behind the curb, spinning the tires and stressing the axles and the differential? What do you really have? And now you're in a 9-hour race. Hour 1 is over, driver 2 gets in, and 30 minutes into a stint, now the car has a problem. You have 2 drivers that haven't driven. We're now going behind the wall to fix a car. So regardless of whose fault it may be or what happened, you have 2 disappointed drivers. We had a situation one time at a race where we had a driver have an accident in the first hour of a race. Sadly, the car was unable to continue, and we had 3 drivers that never turned a lap in the actual competition. Now, when that happens, it wasn't a mechanical failure on the team, so it's of no fault of the team. It could have been the fault of another driver on the racetrack, so that at that point it's of no fault of the driver that's driving the car, but now the team's in a bad spot. And as everybody knows, race cars go around the track time and time and time again, but they certainly don't pay for themselves to go around the track time and time again. There's a large sum of money tied up into the weekend. So now you've disappointed 3 drivers. You're in a tough situation of now managing customer relationships, because what can you do to try to make things right? At the end of the day, it's not your fault, but it's your business, and you have now relationships with some of these people. They could have driven with you for several years, and you want to continue to see them at the track. So it leads you to, what do you do to bail yourself out of this bad situation? As we go racing, we have sort of progressed with the cars we had. We started with a pair of Miatas. We went endurance racing. Actually, first time we went and ran Miatas that we had rented, I had actually bought both cars through PayPal via credit card to go racing. I went all in. We're going to do this rental deal. And the weekend on one end couldn't have gone better. We had one car that went out and ultimately ran perfect all weekend. It saw the checkered flag technically in its class. It won. But it was a solid performance all the way around with that car. The other car, however, was driven by several people that lacked what we like to call mechanical sympathy at the time. There was some crash damage. There was fire that resulted in the crash damage. And when the weekend's said and done, a car that had been purchased maybe 6 weeks prior to the event via credit card is now no longer in existence. There was so much gray area that nothing was really defined as to what happened and who was responsible for the car. So then at that point, now I bought a race car that it never saw the checkered flag of the first race that it participated in. And now I'm kind of stuck here with a car that ultimately went in the dumpster. Renting cars has been very rewarding in motorsports. It allows us to have a relationship with a bunch of different people. We've brought probably well over 50 drivers through rental race cars over the last 7 or 8 years. And from there, we've been able to build relationships with some of the same people. Some of the people that were running with us in 2016 and 2017 are still driving with us today. And through those experiences, you build your driver database, your customer database. Everybody knows with a successful business, the ability to pick and choose your customers is certainly a key element of being able to excel at what you do, because there's a level of expectations on the front end and the back end from both parties, and you're able to develop the chemistry to even providing a better product because you know what you're working with each and every weekend. I think the future for Denton Carden Racing is pretty open. The main thing that we pride ourselves on is putting reliable race cars on the track. The rental business is there. We have a great set of drivers that are in and out of the house cars all the time. We also have several customer-owned race cars. And at the end of the day, as long as it's fun, we'll keep doing it. There's certainly the ability for us to put together a team to go to the next level, whether that's going stock car racing, combining some of my personal endeavors in stock car racing with finding a car, generating sponsors, and then adding that as an element. We certainly wouldn't be too far away from being able to put together a Michelin Pilot Challenge program in IMSA for somebody if we wanted to go to the next level of GT4 cars. Just in the last year of the shop, we've had 3 or 4 different makes of GT4 cars in and out of the shop, so we've become kind of well-versed on what works with some cars, what works with other cars. And as we continue to expand what we do, I think that the future is pretty open. My advice for somebody that's renting a race car is to think about what you want to get out of the deal. Ask a lot of questions. There's no harm in asking questions. If a team offers you a seat for a particular race, you need to ask, am I expected to help with the crew? Is lunch provided? How many sets of tires are we running? What are you bringing for spare parts? There's a lot of things that need to be known up front before you commit the time. Anybody that is racing cars as a hobby, that's a successful businessman, has a strong opportunity cost when they take time away from their job to go racing. A lot of times questions aren't asked and it leads to maybe a experience that was subpar for what the expectations initially were. You always need to know what you're getting out of the deal and what's expected of you as you go forward with a deal. I would also say that when you rent a car, things could go good, things could go bad. Racing is an unknown. You never know what you're getting into. And at the end of the day, if you're with guys that are going racing for fun that have now decided to offset their cost by offering you a seat, you have to know that anything can and will happen and that they're not there out of any bad intentions. You could rent from a professional outfit that rents race cars, and there could just be a day where something that was unforeseen happens. And when things are going wrong, the worst thing you can do is come down on the team. The team is going to try, and the attitude and the people that work for the team is going to be reflected in what they're getting from you as a driver. With myself, when I go to bigger deals, I try to always make sure that I show everybody there that I respect them and that I'm there as part of the cause. Win, lose, or draw, we're a team. And even when you're renting a seat in an amateur racing level, you're still a part of the team for the weekend. So really making sure that you know that nobody's there with any bad intentions. Everybody's there to work hard and provide the best effort possible needs to be remembered when maybe things aren't going as well. Give the guys the motivation to get you the experience that you want. It might be a 2-day race weekend where race 1 didn't go well, but what the crew sees from you is their motivation to make sure that it's right for race number 2.
Between cannonballs and rallies and car treks, I've been on well over 100 road trips, but one of the things that I always see is that nobody else is terribly prepared. And this is not just a jab at Freddie, but generally people don't bring the tools, the supplies, and the things they need to make it all the way to the destination of their road trip. And so I decided, after building kind of the kit that I take between cars for the long drives I go in unreliable vehicles, as the ultimate road trip survival kit. And you'll find a link in the description below to an Amazon shopping cart of the things that I think you need in order to get there and get there without a tow bill attached to it. So check it out now, buy what you think you want, let me know in the comments what I left out, and we'll try to keep refining it so we can build the ultimate road trip survival box.